Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. We're thrilled to have you here with us this morning, or actually this afternoon, to hear about the Open for Anti-Racism program that is going to kick off this fall. And we're going to give you some more information about that call for participation. And we're excited that you're here and interested in possibly applying for the program. And I'm Una Daly, the director of CCCOER. I'm here with James Glapper-Grossklag, my co-grant director for Open for Anti-Racism. And we are entering our third year. And we've learned a lot along the way, and I'm sure we will learn even more this year. What I did want to tell you is that this meeting is being recorded. So for those of you who have colleagues who wanted to attend but couldn't make this time, that recording will be available and sent to you if you registered. There's also a link to these slides, and Liz, could you put a link to the slides in the chat window, please? And there's also a set of FAQs which might be helpful for you after this webinar, and we'll be adding to that as well based on some of the questions that we get today. So our agenda is to tell you a little bit about the OFAR program and then get into what the call for participation is about, the application process and additional resources, and then basically to be available for questions. All right, so any questions in the chat window before I get started?
Not so far.
Not so far. Okay, excellent.
We do have a yeah, never mind. It was a direct message to me. No problem.
Okay. All right, excellent. We will go ahead and get started. All right. I introduced myself. You can see that's an old picture of me. The OFAR has made me go gray in 2 years. Just joking. But I'm Una Daly. I'm the director of the Community College Consortium for OER. And I'm going to let the rest of the team here introduce themselves.
Thanks, Una. Hi, everybody. James Glapper-Grossklag with College of the Canyons. Yeah, and I'm along with Una. I have the great honor and pleasure of co-directing the Open for Anti-Racism program. I'm glad to see everybody.
Hi, everybody. Liz Yada. I work with Una at CCCOER and OE Global, and I'm really excited you could all join us today.
Thank you, Liz. And do we have, I'm not sure if Kim and Joy are here. Are you here, Kim and Joy? Well, Kim and Joy are the amazing course developers, and they're also two of our facilitators on the course that the grantees, those who are accepted into the program, will work with in the fall and throughout the spring as well. And I'm sorry they're not here with us this afternoon, but amazing folks, and I hope you have an opportunity to meet them soon. All right. I also wanted to mention that we have a fuller facilitation team. That's the main leadership team I just spoke about, but we have a fuller facilitation team that almost all of these are California Community College faculty, and those that aren't are community college faculty with a lot of expertise in open education and anti-racism. And we couldn't do this program without them. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the Community College Consortium for OER, we were founded right here in California about 15 years ago. With a focus on supporting colleges in development of open educational programs to support equitable access and success for students. And we're still doing that 15 years later, but we're now a national consortium and have members throughout the country and in Canada as well. We have a community email list that's free and open to all. And it's a great place to learn more about open education and anti-racism and equity as well. The California Community College Chancellor's Office is a member of our consortium, and we're thrilled with that because they also support our goals. All right, why the Open for Anti-Racism program? So it was based on a couple of premises, but I think the timing is really important. Spring and summer of 2020 was really a racial awakening and reckoning time in our society. And educational institutions were putting out very fancy language about how they were going to eliminate racism from their practices, programs, and institutions. And but there wasn't much happening at the faculty level and how that would affect teaching. And so we had the good fortune to work with the Hewlett Foundation to develop that program, the initial program, the pilot year that summer. And it was based on the premise that faculty wanted to make their classrooms anti-racist, but they needed more information, tools, and a safe place that they could learn and implement their practices. And what I think is unique to this program is it looks at OER and open pedagogy as tools that faculty can use to make their classroom anti-racist and to make those changes in collaboration with their students. In fact, one of our participants in our first cohort said the reason she was attracted to the program was she was excited to see the word anti-racism. Most often you see the word equity and it has become meaningless to me. So we find that when we receive applications for this program that most faculty who apply are somewhat aware of open educational resources. In fact, many of them are using them. So open educational resources are freely available learning materials that can be customized by faculty, by students to better serve all learners. And we know that it lowers barriers, cost barriers, but does it in fact also increase equity and representation of voices that are underrepresented? So that's where open pedagogy comes into, is that ability to create assignments with your students to explore open educational resources and actually edit them and make changes to make them representative of student voices and other groups that have been underrepresented in our higher education. So open pedagogy is that tool to create student agency and to help students become creators of new knowledge in the discipline. So those are tools that have been used effectively by our participants to make their classrooms anti-racist. I think we're going to share a little bit about that later, some specific examples, or we can certainly do that in the Q&A. All right, so the program in general is about exploring how to use OER and open pedagogy to make instructional materials and teaching anti-racist. And there's a set of modules in the fall through an online course, which I think we'll talk about a little bit more later, where you will learn about anti-racist pedagogy, OER, and open pedagogy. And it's a Canvas-based course. It's primarily asynchronous, although there are webinars that are occurring throughout that time period. What will be the capstone of that 6 weeks learning experience will be the development of an action plan that will be implemented in the spring semester with your students. And throughout this time, you will be benefiting from peer connections with other folks, either from your college and also with the entire cohort. There's also going to be webinars and workshops. The webinars have featured speakers primarily from the anti-racism space, either anti-racist educators and policy folks. There's also coaches. So each of the teams is assigned a coach. And there's also OER support that is directly available to you through a set of OER specialists who can work with you to find and make changes to open educational resources. And finally, a really big piece of this program is documenting the impact. So for those who participate in the program, there will be surveys pre and post. There'll also be an opportunity to participate in interviews, and there'll also be a student outcome portion of this. We also will be asking you to engage with your institutions and your administrators to share what you're learning and to increase the impact of your participation in the program so that other folks at your college can take advantage of that and make changes of their own. So here's just a snapshot here, and I'm not going to repeat all of these, but I think we have 21 colleges who have participated over the last 2 years. And you can see it's distributed around the state, and they've all done some really wonderful work in their classrooms to make them anti-racist. This is a sampling from year one of some of the great speakers we've had come in and talk. We've worked with Education Trust West, which is a policy and research group that looks at educational policy and strives to make policy more equitable and anti-racist. So we've been really pleased to work with them. We also had A2 Men, which is the African American Male Education Network and Development. I'm sorry, it's a long one to specify. We had them come in and talk about the work they are doing. And so we have many of these wonderful speakers who come in and will share information with folks. And all of these are archived if you care to listen to them. We also do have workshops which are specifically for our participants on specific aspects of anti-racist pedagogy. All right. So I think this is so the call for participation. Now I've given you a big overview, and I'm sure that sure some of that didn't make sense, but so the call for participation went out 2 weeks ago. And I just want to repeat that, we are seeking diverse teams of faculty from California community colleges who wish to make their teaching and instructional materials anti-racist using the affordances of open education. So specifically open educational resources and open pedagogy. And this will run from October through June of 2023. And the teams that we're inviting teams from colleges to apply, 4 to 6 faculty, and there is a requirement for a letter of support from your department chair or division dean to indicate that they will support you throughout this time. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to James.
No problem. Thank you, Una. Thanks. And I'm going to walk through the call for participation that presumably you've seen, or there's somebody from your college has seen, maybe sent to you. So we're going to walk through this pretty thoroughly, hopefully addressing any questions that are already in your head. But if you have a specific question to a specific element of the call for participation, like on the slide that I'm speaking to, feel free to unmute and ask a question if it's very specific to the section that I'm covering, or pop that in the chat, and Una and Liz can hopefully respond in the chat. And then at the end, we'll have time for other questions as well. So as Una mentioned, the whole program starts off with a learning experience, an online facilitated class in Canvas, asynchronous, that we're all used to. You'll see the dates of the course here, start of October through the end-ish of November, through Thanksgiving time. The course essentially covers what is anti-racism and anti-racist pedagogy, and then what is OER, what is open pedagogy, and how do OER and open pedagogy support or provide you the opportunity to make something anti-racist in your teaching. As you might expect, the class includes both small group and large group discussions and activities throughout. Yeah, and then next slide, please.
Sorry about that.
Thank you. So the output of the class, the end result of the class, besides you just learning a bunch of stuff and getting to know everybody else who's in the program, of course, is that you individually will create an individual action plan, even though we're recruiting teams from colleges, so that you're coming with a cohort from your college. You individually will create an action plan for your specific class. What are you going to do? And this is really one of the premises of our whole approach here, is that you're learning something and then you're taking action. Very unlike the statements that all of our colleges put on our websites back in the spring and summer of 2020, saying, "Oh boy, we're going to be against racism and everything's going to be great because we put this language on our website," and then then you know what did or didn't happen. We want you to take action right away. That's really one of the major premises. So we just pause on this slide for another second. In that second paragraph, you see a couple of examples of what one might do to make your to include in your action plan. My teaching discipline is history, so I might say, oh gosh, I'm using an open textbook, or in my course on U.S. history, there's nothing on Juneteenth, and now I've learned all about Juneteenth, so I'm going to put something into that open textbook or put something into my course on Juneteenth, and even better, I'll engage my students to create that content on Juneteenth. Or in a biology textbook, and this is, unfortunately, this is old news now, a lot of times biology textbooks will include images of the human body, and guess what? All the people are white. So perhaps work with your students to find images of non-white bodies that illustrate the point that your biology textbook is trying to make. So those are just examples. Our participants have done such phenomenal work in so many different ways than we ever could have imagined. Next slide, please. Here's one more quote from a participant. OFAR gave me the starting point to the confidence I needed to be frank and vulnerable with my students when it comes to race and privilege and how they themselves engage and perhaps perpetuate and benefit from racism. So there are a couple of really interesting elements in this. I think one, many of our participants tell us that they've gained confidence and a vocabulary to be able to talk about race, racism, anti-racism with their students in a way they did not feel equipped to prior to OFAR. And secondly, there's knowledge of a greater understanding of the structure of racism, but also in one's own discipline. Our disciplines come from somewhere, and the knowledge in our disciplines comes from somewhere, and sometimes some knowledge is left out. So there's greater awareness of that as well. Next slide, please, Una. Program requirements and support. So those who are selected, we ask that you attend monthly webinars on, as Una alluded to, on anti-racism and open pedagogy. We provide dedicated support on OER. If you or your team say, we really want to go down the route of adopting OER, we don't know where to get started, we don't know where to find it, we've got a team that will support you in searching for OER, help you understand open licenses, so you don't have to be an expert in that when you come in by any means. Also, as Una mentioned, it's really important to us to document the impact of your participation. So we'll ask you to complete surveys. Some of you will have the opportunity to participate in interviews. We'll ask you to, at the very end of the program next June, we'll ask you to upload to OER Commons an openly licensed syllabus and a sample assignment so that others can benefit from your work. That's openly licensed, of course. We'll ask you to give a workshop on campus or report out at a department meeting, do something on campus so you're sharing your knowledge on campus. Submit a brief final reflection. It could be in writing. We've had people do videos, do PowerPoints, whatever suits you. And then provide course outcomes data through your institution. I'll talk more about that in a minute in more detail. Next slide, please. So these next two slides, they are word for word from the call for participation. If you are going to apply, we strongly encourage you to share this information, these two slides, or this language from the call for participation with your institutional research team. So essentially, we are going to ask your college, not you individually, but your college, to provide to our researchers, the RP group, it's an external research team, some data that documents the student outcomes, success and retention, demographic data, going back 3 years in the course that you taught that you're also going to be treating in the spring. So let's say if I'm going to do something with my History 1 class in the spring, then my College of the Canyons would need to provide student outcomes data from my teaching of History 1 for the past 3 years. And to do that again in the semester, the spring semester, the semester in which I'm doing something different, and in the semester after that, fall of 23, so that we have a longitudinal look at student outcomes to see if something changed. those of you who are researchers, this is so elementary to you, but this is not something that all of us are familiar with. So again, we ask that you inform your institutional research team of this so that we can be sure that they'll respond when asked. Next slide, please. Here's more detail on what your institutional researchers will provide or would provide if you were selected. And again, we encourage you to share this with your institutional researchers now so that they're not surprised when you ask this later on. Next slide, please. So who participates? And Sheila already asked a great question in the chat at the top of the hour, and that is this only for faculty? Yes, at this moment, the OFAR program supports faculty, full-time faculty and adjunct faculty. We really encourage you to remember our adjunct colleagues. After all, in most of our colleges, 2/3 of our students are taught by adjuncts. You will earn a stipend for completing the program. In the fall, for completing the course, we'll cut you a check for $500. And then in the spring, after you complete everything in the spring and upload your syllabus and upload your assignment and submit your final reflection and so on, then in the spring, we'll cut you another check for $3,000. So totally overall a stipend of $3,500. Yeah, we're happy that we can provide that. Thanks to the Hewlett Foundation, we're able to provide that kind of support. So next slide, please. The application process, again, this is pretty straightforward, and thanks to Liz and Una on the application website, you can see all of these prompts before you start to complete the application, so you can know what information you need to gather before you go in. So we assume that one person is going to fill out the application. We ask that you identify one person as your team lead, and that team lead gets a couple of dollars extra for their trouble. Yeah, so the team lead would want to gather all of this information from all of the participants. And again, this is pretty straightforward information, but it can take some time if you're wrangling 5 or 6 colleagues to get all that information together. That could take some time. So take a look at that before you set out to submit the application. And I notice we have one little typo here. In line 1, we note 2 to 6 faculty, 2 to 6 in the teams, but it's actually 4 to 6 in the teams. So we have capacity to.
For that, James, that was last year's.
Yeah.
We will fix that.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Una. Next slide, please. One last quote, and this is a quote from a college administrator who supported a team last year. This administrator wrote, "We have a group of faculty that are not supportive of DEI or anti-racist initiatives and actively lobby to stop them." Unfortunately, maybe some of us can identify with this. The more faculty we have with anti-racist skill sets, the more successful we will be in becoming an anti-racist college. That was really heartwarming for us to read. And I realized I maybe overlooked the note about a letter of support from an administrator. So I'll speak to that right now. So we do ask that you submit a letter of support from somebody. It could be your department chair, could be your division dean. Last year we had team support letters, multiple letters from vice presidents and presidents. That's fine too. What we would like, the point of this is that we want to be sure that somebody on your campus knows what you're doing. You're doing some really awesome work. You're doing something that can really positively impact your college. And we don't want you just to be isolated on your college, right? We want somebody at your campus to know about this work, support this work, and say, hey, you should be doing a workshop on this. We've had multiple teams tell us that they were the headliners at their college's convocation following their participation. So we want somebody in the administration of the organization to be there to support you, to lift up the work that you're doing. And we do ask also that administrator attend some of the activities, like the workshop or the webinars that we hold in the spring, so that they're getting a taste of what you're doing. And then at the very end of the year in June, all of the teams report out or do a webinar on really show and tell about their overall projects. And we ask that the administrators attend that as well. And again, our intent there is to deepen the impact of what you're doing. So it's not just this, unknown group of faculty going off and doing something. We want you to be supported when you when you go back to the institution to make some change. Next slide, please. So we review the applications, of course, with the expanded leadership team that Una highlighted at the beginning. So a large number of people from across the state with all kinds of different expertise, but all from community colleges. We look at your applications and we look for all kinds of things, right? Diversity, but very broadly written diversity. You know, it's difficult to say what we're looking for, but we really hope that you will that your team reflects your students, reflects our massive diverse state. And you see on there on the right, all of us who are with our different roles who will be reviewing the applications. So next slide, please. Here's a calendar. So we're really happy that we have this calendar together. You see where we are. Call for participation is opened. We will notify you, or the call for participation closes, sorry, closes. Then we review the applications, let you know. We have a webinar with the date and time already set. Typically our webinars are on Fridays in the noon hour. And you see the schedule for the fall semester there right away, so you can get that on your calendar. I know people, inevitably somebody will ask, well, what if I have something going on at that time? If I'm scheduled to teach a class at that time already, let us know. Or it's occurred, you know, somebody has said, well, my dean called me into the office, or the president, you know, ordered this meeting happening at this time. I can't be at this webinar. You know, we can work that out. But do let us know. We want to be sure that you are participating fully, and we do record the webinars and make them available. But if you know right now that none of these dates are going to work for you, it's probably a good idea to have somebody else participate in the team than you. Next slide, please. And we're just about done. We'll open it up for questions.
We will.
So here are some other resources. Again, Liz at the very outset put a link to the slides in the chat already, so you can go back and look at all these resources. These are live links in the slides. You'll note that there is an FAQ. So many of the questions that you have might already have been covered. You'll see an overview of year one. You'll see archives from different activities in the past. Whoops. And yes, and the year one showcases, and I think we probably will have year two showcases up there at some point.
We will in the next week.
Great. So the reporting out, or the show and tell at the end of the year of our participants talking about what amazing work they did throughout the year is really inspiring stuff. And it's great. It gives you an idea of what kind of projects people engage in. And then I think one more slide, please, Liz. Thank you. And you see our contact information there. And with that, I think we'll turn it over to questions. And I apologize, I have not been following the chat. I see a lot of things going on in the chat. Una, do we just want to verbalize the questions?
Yeah, I have been answering most of them. Hopefully, I may have missed some, so I do apologize for that. Yeah, we had one from Roxy. So Roxy has asked, what happens if you're adjunct and you don't end up teaching a class in the spring? The program does require that you implement your changes in a class that you teach in the spring. We were fortunate that last year we didn't run into that. So, I mean, we will take your best judgment that you will have a class in the spring and work from there. James, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I think I hope we all understand that situation. It's particularly these days when a lot of colleges are experiencing enrollment declines. But we will reiterate that the premise of the program really is that you're learning something and you're taking action. That's what this program is about. It's not a reading club or a book club about reading anti-racist books. That's fantastic, but that's not what this is. It's not, a program to revise your syllabus that you're going to use someday and put it on the shelf. It's about learning something in the fall and implementing it in the spring. That's really, the action focus of our program. So that also is something to think about in case of librarians. Many of our librarian colleagues teach and some of them don't. So we would want to, if a librarian were going to participate, who could be, of course, very valuable in the program and on campus, we'd want to see that the librarian is teaching, an information literacy class or something like that. Also, in the distance education world, which is a world that I know pretty well, you often have faculty members who are distance education leads or managers or coordinators. Terrific, there's a great skill set there. And we'd want to know that that person is teaching a class. So, we need to think about that. We're happy to engage in dialogue with you, you and your colleagues individually via email. That's, we're very, very happy to do that. But again, we do want to know that you're teaching something in the spring.
Hi, so I was going to answer Julie's question. Julie asked, if your college has participated in the past, is it less likely that a team will be selected? Not necessarily, Julie, but we do look for, we have kind of a holistic view around impact. It'll be taken into account with a lot of other factors. And then she further asked, how many applications do you typically get? So we have room for probably 8 teams. That's what we ran with last year. And we had about 68 applications. So it's a fairly competitive grant application, given the level of interest. And we are just so pleased with the level of interest in the program, but it does make it somewhat selective.
Yeah, and I guess I'll just give voice to one question I saw about, I think it was from Ellen, about disciplines. Do the faculty all need to be from the same department or division? Absolutely. I just want to reiterate, I know we answered that, but absolutely not. It's not the case that you need to be from the same department or division. Many of our past participants have told us how wonderful it was to work closely with colleagues from their college in different departments and in the program to work with people from different colleges. So yeah, that diversity of disciplines has been remarked upon by our participants as a very positive thing. But that also doesn't rule out everybody being in the same discipline. Last year we had one team where everybody was from the same discipline, and I'm sure that's going to have a huge impact on the students who go through that department. And those classes many of their classes are general education classes, so it's going to have a huge impact on a lot of students at that college.
So yeah, we have another question here, which I'm happy to answer, from Dawn. Yes, the participants will be actually executing their action plan. Interesting choice of words, during the spring with a live classroom. Well, in this, and let me see, are any changes designing through the action plan we are creating in the spring? Oh, a good question. Yes, you're actually implementing this in the spring, Dawn. So you're not doing the planning in the spring. So at this point, the way the program is set up is that in the fall, you will be taking that online course that we mentioned, and you'll be developing an action plan. So as part of that 6-week course, and then you'll have December and perhaps parts of January, depending on when your courses start at your college, you'll have that time. You'll be working with coaches and other teams to get ready for implementing it in the spring. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah.
Is it possible to speak?
Yeah, of course.
Hi, this is Dawn. I do need to follow up a little bit more because maybe I'm thinking too big about my action plan. So, I'll have a syllabus prepared for students by, late January when we start class, based on the work I did during the fall while attending the webinars and so forth. But if my plan is to integrate student input with regard to actual resources, that can't be on the syllabus. but this makes sense. I'll be able to figure this out in the fall. Yeah.
Yes, many of our past participants have done something similar, Dawn, and that namely to, let's say they realize that there's some deficient or some deficient element in their instructional materials or materials they're using, and they want to work with their students in the spring to adapt those materials, find new materials, change the materials. Plenty of our past participants have done something similar to that.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and that's totally in line with what we described as open pedagogy. Some of us might call it project-based learning, experiential learning. That's dynamite.
Yeah, we had another question about multiple teams from the same college. And we certainly allow that to occur. I mean, you can certainly apply that way. But because we also are looking for regional diversity, we generally will not accept multiple teams from the same college because we do want to maximize this impact throughout our state. But thank you for that question.
I also had a question on the application, the question about the impact of the students in the classes. You guys mentioned the expected number of students and the demographics. Should I just ask like our data team to give us like averages? I'm just thinking because like low enrollment has changed, so those numbers might be different.
Yeah, that would certainly work, Lorena. That would work, and that would be very, pretty darn precise, and that would be terrific. What I think it's safe to say that I'll just speak for myself in reviewing applications for the past couple of years. I noticed the applications that reveal a knowledge of their student body, and I noticed the applications that don't know a thing about their student body. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that question, and for another great one from Jillian, who says, are participants selected as a team? So Jillian, to go back and clarify this, actually a team applies through a single application. So your college will be, your group of faculty at your college will be identifying a team leader who will play that role of gathering the information and doing the application. So it is actually from a single institution. So thank you for asking that, because I know we have a lot of adjunct faculty who are also interested, and they may teach at multiple colleges. So you would apply as a member of a specific college's team. I hope that is helpful.
May I ask a question for somebody who said something in the chat earlier? Adjunct faculty who don't have 3 years of data from the college where they work, what are they supposed to do?
Yeah, I put a brief reply in there, and I'll certainly let James jump in. He's got a lot more experience in that area, but we have had faculty who, adjunct faculty who haven't taught the course before or have been new faculty. We would like to see you continue to teach that so that we can get some longitudinal data. So we'd like to see it a subsequent semester. And James, do you want to add anything else to that?
Yeah, and Sheila, thanks for amplifying that good question. Essentially, we're our research partners in the RP group. This is a design of research, right? Design of an experiment. We want to see what changes. However, more important than that is that we want you to be in the program and learn something and do something and help your students. So yeah, if you don't have 3 years of experience at the college, we can, there'll be a little gap in our data, but that's okay. We can live with that. But as Una said, we would also want to know that your typical teaching assignment would include repeating that same class from the spring again in the fall, so that we could get some little bit of longitudinal data. I hope that makes sense. Hope that helps.
And Catherine asked about the letter of support from the manager of distance education instead of the chair or dean. Well, we're looking at changing, the instructional materials and instructional practices. So we want somebody who's supporting you that is in part of that instructional chain. So it may be dependent on how the DE manager is, how that role is described at your college. James, would you like to add on to that?
Yeah, no, I think you really hit on that, Una. Yeah, if the logical person in your organization to support your work is the DE lead, then that's what's logical for your organization. It's not the case everywhere, right? But yeah, it might make sense in your case. And as we said, we want that to be a benefit to you and everyone from your college who is participating. We want you to have an informed point of contact on your campus who is going to back you up if a bunch of other faculty members are cranky that you're talking about anti-racism. We want there to be somebody at the institution who can get HR on the phone and support you. If you have an idea to do a workshop on campus, we want an informed administrator to be able to say, yes, I support this. This group should do this workshop. Does that help a little bit? So, it depends on where you are in the organization and the shape of your college, really.
I think this was a good question from Jim and Sean, and I'm sorry, I probably missed a few in between, but they asked about if a team is accepted, will other members of the college be able to participate in the online facilitated course? Now, we have facilitators who facilitate the course with our participants, and because they're not really in a position to accept other people, the course will not be available to people who aren't part of the accepted team. They won't in a facilitated version. We do have some versions of the course available on Canvas Commons. So both a self-paced and a facilitated version of that. So people can engage that way if they're not part of the accepted team. And some of our webinars and workshops are open to beyond just the cohort that is going through. And we generally let people know about that through our email list. And we have been saving people who apply for the program but aren't accepted this year. We've been keeping an email list of those folks, and we let them know about those ones that, and they would likely be in the spring, but that are open to others. I bet we missed a ton.
Yeah, if you asked a question and we missed it in the chat, feel free to unmute if you can, or type it again in the chat.
Well, let's see. Colleen asked about class size minimums. I think we might have covered that one.
Yes, I responded in the chat. There is, if you're teaching a small class, more power to you. We don't have a class minimum for this. And then Liz, I just saw in the chat. From Liz Stevenson, I want to acknowledge your very, very good point about classroom faculty versus faculty overall, librarians, coordinators, etc., who of course have faculty status at many campuses, may not be teaching classes. So thanks for helping us to improve our communication about the opportunity in the future. Thank you, Liz. Let's see, I'm just scrolling through the chat. Feel free to unmute if you've got another question that we missed.
I have a question, Justin, because I know I'm going to be asked this by various faculty at my school. There are people who will be hesitant to rally to the cause this time, but will be wondering what about next time. So my guess is we can't promise any next time. Is that right?
Well, we are incredibly fortunate to be funded through the Hewlett Foundation. We're very grateful. We have funding through this year, through year 3. That's what we know. Having said that, we know that the outcomes from years 1 and 2 are excellent. The participants really speak very highly of the program. Students in the classes that have been impacted speak highly of the program. Our funder speaks highly of the program. So we think it's reasonable that we would find funding for a year 4 and a year 5, but that's not a done deal at this point. I don't know,
Thank
Una, is that fair, Una?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we've been very fortunate to receive funding the last 3 years. We can't predict, but so far our funder has been really very pleased with the outcome. So we believe, but yeah, no guarantees.
So my answer will be carpe diem, but don't give up hope.
Yes, yes. And again, as Una mentioned, the openly licensed Canvas classes from years past, devoid of any participants, but just the Canvas classes, they're openly licensed. They are on Canvas Commons. We know that many institutions around the United States have downloaded those courses and adapted those courses and used those as a basis for a learning experience at their own colleges. So, that's wonderful if you do that. And please let us know. It really brings joy to our hearts to hear that.
Hey, James, I have a quick question. Eliana here.
Yes, Eliana.
Do you also have available under Canvas Commons the 6-week modules that the faculty will go through?
So yes and no. So in year 1, the course, that Canvas course, was 4 weeks, and we uploaded a self-paced and a facilitated version. In year 2, we transitioned to a 6-week course, and the facilitated and self-paced versions, I believe, have been uploaded. If they have not been uploaded yet, they'll be uploaded like next week. We're in that phase of wrapping up year 2. So yes, those are freely available, openly licensed, as should happen with teaching and learning. The course will continue to evolve, and we've got lots of changes coming for year 3. So at the end of year 3, so next summer, our fabulous facilitators, Joy and Kim, will tighten up what they did for year 3 and upload those to Canvas Commons as well.
Yeah, year 2 is uploaded. It was uploaded the first week of August.
Oh, great.
So you'll see hot off the presses.
How can we find it? What was the
Just
best?
search for Open for Anti-Racism.
Okay.
And I think no hyphen. We generally don't use the hyphen. So it's,
Okay. Thank you.
yeah. Oh, and yes, and thank you again, Sarah, for that question. I'm going to go ahead and exit out of this. I hope everybody's gotten our information, and we can once again put the slides in here, because I can actually share the link to that course with people. Let's see. Oops. Okay. What are we seeing now? I have stopped sharing. So there we go. Okay, there's everybody.
Yes, and also once again on the OFAR web page, there are links to the faculty showcases from year 1 and year 2, or not yet year 2, but year 1 are there and year 2 are coming. And those showcases, those are the end of the year in June, the webinars at which the participants present their overall projects, super inspiring, and lots of great ideas. Oh, you can do this. Oh, you can do that. So take a look at those. Also, we have interviews from year 1 participants also on the website. So you can take a peek at those.
Here is the slides for the presentation we did at Cal OER. I had the pleasure of doing it with Joy Shoemate, who's one of our course developers and facilitators, really important person on our team. And she and Kim had just uploaded the course. So if you follow those slides and you go to, finding you the slide number. Oh, there we go. It's towards the end. Geez, very end, the slides. Slide deck. Yes, it's on slide 26. You can find, thank you, Liz. Yes. There we go. So there's the self-paced version and links to all of that. And so I think the Cal OER presentation was more about the overall thrust of the program. So I hope that those slides are helpful. And it also gives a little preview of the research that we're still working on from year 2.
Yeah, and spoiler alert, the participants thought it was great. It's just so amazing. You know, it's just amazing to hear, you know, 90% of participants say that they, you know, are going to continue using open pedagogy. You know, 90% of the students in the classes felt more engaged. You know, just terrific stuff, really. But I have to say also, you know, to all of you who are here, you are a certain type of colleague, right? You are here because you want to do this work. And those are the kinds of people we've been blessed to work with the past 2 years. You know, the people who really want to engage in this work, who probably have done a ton of professional development already, and you want to do more, and you want to make your teaching better for your students. You're the kind of people who are here. So of course something's going to improve for your students, because that's why we're all here, right? So
We do find that, yes, that
we're blessed that yeah, we get a lot of superstar faculty that want to participate in this. We're just so fortunate, and that's all of you who are here. So any other questions, feel free to unmute.
Well, it's a silly question because I know everybody knows it already, but if you could just say out loud the deadline for submission to submit again.
it's Wednesday, September 7th at 5 p.m. Pacific. So it's 2 days after we return from our Labor Day holiday. And we've made an effort to keep it open for a month this year. Last year, we were able to have it extend a little further into September, but we got some feedback that it wasn't great for the asynchronous facilitated course to end at the same time as faculty were giving finals to their students. So we had to slide everything 2 weeks forward. And that's fine. That's what we need to do to make this more effective for our participants. So that's why it starts October 10th for those folks who are accepted into the program.
And I can't speak for Una, but I know I can hang out for a few minutes after the top of the hour if you have an individual question, or you know, a question that's very specific to your campus, or you don't feel comfortable asking in front of everybody else. I can hang out for a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. We can hang out for a bit. We're excited to be here and to hear all your questions. And also, please do share the recording. We'll probably get that out. Liz, what day do you think we'll be able to get that out to folks who registered?
Hopefully this afternoon or Monday at the latest.
Yeah, well, that's perfect. I think Monday is great. Thank you. And I guess at this point, since I'm not seeing any more questions, we could turn off the recorder. And then if you would like to stay on with us to ask something specific that you'd prefer to ask afterwards, we can do that.
I have a